Headlines. All right, let's get right to this Cowboys discussion. And it's interesting because I saw this from Spot Track. Spot Track, they're a company website that keeps up with all the NFL contracts, and they also keep up with NFL spending, off-season spending, in free agent spending, that kind of stuff. So, period. That's what they track. Spot Track. Maybe that pun is intended, but anyway. So I saw this yesterday and thought to myself, man, Cowboys fans are going to be very disappointed when they learn, and they probably already know this about the Dallas Cowboys. But according to Spot Track, the Dallas Cowboys are the lowest spending team in this offseason so far, and it's by a wide margin, in my opinion. They're 32nd in the NFL in offseason spending at $93 million. That's going to change because they, signing CeeDee Lamb, maybe that will change in terms of their offseason spending. That'll add to it. But the Steelers are 31st at $147 million. That is a big gap, in my opinion. And then the Chargers are 30th at $150 million in spending. The team that spent the most this offseason are the Lions. The Lions have spent $626 million. And you know who's second? And Cowboys fans ain't gonna like this either. The Eagles. The Eagles. We talk about the Eagles all the time. Howie Roseman's always aggressive. He's always trying to maximize that window. He's a guy that truly understands. We always talk about that 5-year window. Like, hey, man, the NFL is kind of built in 5-year windows. If you don't contend or you're not winning a championship or contending for a championship in that 5-year window, might as well tweak it or, kind of retool some things. And right now, the Cowboys are creeping closer and closer to that 5-year window that we talk about. And for those who don't know, the 5-year window is no coach and quarterback have won their first Super Bowl together outside of the first 5 years they've been together. So after that, you got to change something. Change the coach. Sometimes you can change the quarterback, whatever you want to do. But this is a trend for the Cowboys. So this is not just the offseason spending that includes cash and everything else, contracts obligated and free agents you brought in too. But if you look at the cash that the Cowboys have spent over the last 8 years or so, you can go back to 2013. So basically kind of make it a 10-year sample size from 2013 to 2023. I did not include 2024 in this because we're still obviously in this. We just started this offseason, this calendar year for the NFL. So this is it. This is last year's cash spending, or including last year's cash spending. So from 2013 to 2016, the Cowboys ranked 25th in that 4-year period in cash spending. Cash is king, as you all know. Right? That's what matters in NFL contracts. NFL contracts are basically a whole bunch of fake money. All right, it's all a bunch of funny money, unless you're talking about the guaranteed money in the deal. Because not like Major League Baseball contracts or NBA contracts, they're not fully guaranteed. So the only thing that matters really is the cash. And cash is what a player will actually receive in a contract. And the cap is kind of the mechanism of compliance, way NFL teams can account for different contracts, but they make it malleable on purpose, just like a tax code. So you can find ways to circumvent the cap if you want to. Hell, look at what the Eagles do. There are ways to do it. And one of the ways to circumvent the cap, or one of the loopholes in it, is if you spend cash, like with most things in our society, if you spend cash up front, you'll probably get a discount on it. You buy a car in cash, you want to buy a house in cash, you want to buy anything in cash, they don't give you a discount on it. Oh, you going to spend cash on it? I'll give you a discount. Same thing with the salary cap, essentially. The contracts, if you pay a lot of it in cash, you get a discount. Patrick has talked about this before, the cash over cap. That's what they're talking about, right? Just spending cash. But you got to have liquid assets to do it. If you don't have the liquid cash to do it, then, as an owner, that's not something you want to pursue. You don't want to go broke giving away all your liquid capital. But if you got it, it can give you a huge advantage. And the Cowboys, you would think they got the cash because they are the most valuable franchise in the NFL, worth over $9 billion. But They don't. Maybe they're worth $9 billion because they keep the money. They keep the cash. Maybe that's how you. That's how you increase the value of the franchise. I'm not sure. I'm not a billionaire. I don't own the Cowboys. But the Cowboys don't spend cash like that. They're not about getting that type of advantage. And oftentimes you'll see these teams, they'll front load contracts, put a lot of it in guarantees in the signing bonus early on so they can get that damn thing off the books sooner. You just watched what the 49ers did. Yes, they when they extended Christian McCaffrey, he's making $19 million a year now, but his salary cap number dropped. They almost decreased it by like 50%. That's ultimately what you're trying to work so you can have more advantages, working the salary cap. If guys, you can lower their cap number, but still, oh yeah, they're making this much a year. But yeah, I gave them how much of that in a signing bonus, or I gave them how much of that up front early on. The Cowboys don't use those different mechanisms within the salary cap to gain advantage. And here's the proof. So from 2013 to 2016, the Cowboys were 25th in that 4-year period in cash spent. The Eagles were first in cash spending in that 4-year period. 2016 to 2019, and these are records you can get from the Players Association. Spot Track keeps these as well. There are lots of different places where you can find it. 2016 to 2019, by the way, the NFL Players Association, they publish it too. They had a tweet out from about the 2017 to 2020 timeframe. And basically, it's more from 2016 to 2019 because they take out that COVID year. They identify the Cowboys as a team that spent the least amount of cash over that period from 2016 to 2019. So from 2013 to 2016, Cowboys spent the 25th most cash in the NFL over that time period. 2016 to 2019, they spent the least amount of cash in the NFL over that time period. And from 2021 to 2023, by the way, the Eagles, they were top 5. So the Eagles spent the most money from 2013 to 2016, and they were top 5 in cash spending from 2016 to 2019. You get the point. From 2021 to 2023, during that period, the Cowboys were 30th in cash spending during that time period. The Eagles were 10th in cash spending from 2021 to 2023. So I'm not always comparing them to the Eagles, but you get my point. It's just a different mentality and a different philosophy in terms of how aggressive you are. You can be aggressive in talent acquisition in the trade market, be aggressive in the draft, to be aggressive in free agency, which the Eagles are at that, but they're also aggressive in the way they spend their cash, getting those guys paid, getting those contracts off the books so we can move on. And we can start building for the future. And now the Cowboys in a situation where, because they have, over and over again, they've restructured these deals and they've pushed a lot of this stuff back, right? They've pushed stuff back instead of paying up front in cash. They've been pushing payments back, and now the bill is due. I mean, think about how many guys are going to be free agents for the Cowboys after the 2024 season that they have to pay right now. You got CeeDee Lamb. He's going to get top money at wide receiver. You got Zach Martin. Is he going to retire? I don't know. You probably want to pay him yearly just to keep him from retiring.
Yeah.
You're like, I mean, we're going to give you a bag just every year to keep you from retiring. It's going to be a big bag because he's a Hall of Famer. DeMarcus Lawrence, you got to let him walk, or you got to give him a similar deal. Like, hey, man, we're going to give you just a bag a year, or we're moving on from DeMarcus Lawrence. You got Brandon Cooks, probably move on from him. Then you got Dak Prescott, too. What are you going to do about him? He's going to get big money. Yeah. And that's a lot of bills you got to pay coming up. And don't forget, after 2025, Micah Parsons about to break the bank. So I think they should start spending more cash to try to get themselves in a better salary cap position. They end up in salary cap hell because of their method. Their method of navigating the salary cap, I think, is flawed. I think they have the cash. They should spend more of the cash. Now, maybe they don't want to spend that cash. Maybe they're like, no, Our cash is way more important than this damn business. We'll take care of business. We'll draft. That's a cost effective way to acquire talent. Nobody's more homegrown in the NFL than the Dallas Cowboys. So we draft, and they draft really well. Give them props for that. And they figured that's how we're going to run this team. We're going to build it through the draft, and we're going to make very frugal decisions when it comes to free agency or the trade market. But there is a fine line between frugal and cheap. There is. And sometimes I think the Cowboys are, I think they're leaning more toward being cheap than being frugal.
Yeah. And I mean, I think they're running the old school way of doing things where, for a long time, a lot of franchises were owned by guys who bought franchises before the NFL boomed. And so there was a lot of guys that did not have the liquid cash. And if they did, they had to take out basically loans against the team to get the cash where they could make it back and they could pay the loan back. But, they weren't necessarily liquid from another part of their life. So they couldn't say, I have this liquid and the league's making this much. So like the Al Davises or the Bud Adams and guys like that, they bought in the league before the league blew up. And now everybody's rich. And Jerry Jones bought in right before it blew up. And so he's kind of in that old school mentality, even though he was one of the richer owners when he bought it. He's now worth a ton. But you don't know how much of that is liquid versus how much of that is in ownership of, a super valuable franchise and all the other pieces of businesses he owns. But he's still working under the old school mindset of this is how it's done. We're not dealing with everybody being so liquid and finding this loophole of being able to do it, where there's now more and more trust funds and not trust funds, but groups of investors and all of that, where there's more people being able to put in massive amounts of money to try and raise the value of their franchise. He doesn't necessarily have to do that to raise the value of his franchise. These other guys want to raise their value by being relevant. So they are spending more and more money. But when you have people like the Waltons buy in and these massive groups of investors buy in that have tons and tons of money, it doesn't bother them. That's why they can, the Broncos can make a Russell Wilson deal and then move on from it a couple of years later and pay a coach a ton of money and not, and they're not necessarily competing, but they're also not sweating it.
You're right.
Where I feel like if the Cowboys had done what they did, we'd be destroying them still for that. And the national media would be destroying them still for what a terrible decision they made. But the Broncos just went, we did it. We'll pay him. Go away. We'll deal with it because we'll pay him cash. And try and get him out of here.
Off the books.
And so it's that concept of his just trying to be more old school with it. And you wonder how long you can do it. And this is really a big offseason for it, because do you, in renegotiating 3 giant stars in Dak, CeeDee, and Micah, do you finally break that trend and set yourself up for a future that is not as cap strapped and as pushed of, getting yourself in cap hell that they're in now? Or do you continue on with it and just try and figure out a way to do it the business as usual? And like when you look at that list, it'd be interesting to see if you kind of just based on making Micah the highest paid defensive player, you made CeeDee top 3, you made Dak top 3. And if you put all of that, said they signed those 3, how far do they jump up that list of offseason spending? Because you figure they jump up, they pay them. And so if they pay 2 of them, even it'll jump up that list.
No doubt.
So but that's the question. Are you between being cheap and being frugal? Are you going to sign those guys and jump up that list? And we all say, well, that list was premature because you weren't spending because you were being prepared for what you were doing. Or are you not going to sign them and you're being cheap? You didn't want to pay them. And so that's when you say there's a fine line, it's do you pay those guys or not? Because you'll jump right up that list if you start paying those guys, because that's, even if it's just the 2 offensive this offseason, that's 2 top 3 money for 2 of the most expensive positions in football.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, that's right. That's why it is glaring, because it's like, well, everybody else is signing their stars.
Yeah.
Everybody, why are you not signing? You're a superstar. Everybody's just like, oh, we draft this guy and he's all pro. We're signing this guy.
Yeah.
They're doing it. Why aren't you working with the same urgency? That's also part of the conversation.
Yeah.
So it's a very strange offseason.
It's again, I'll say, like Jerron Bland is still a guy that I'll say, if you need to, change up what you're doing and trying to, Jerron Bland is a guy that you're either going to have to pay in 2 years or you're going to have to trade this offseason. That's a guy you have to look at because he's making very little money right now, but he finished in Defensive Player of the Year voting. That dude is going to try and make some money next offseason. So, I guess you can try and get through this season, but again, that you're getting less value for him at a certain point.
Mm-hmm.
Like those are the types of moves. If you don't want to pay the big money, move off these guys when you still got them under control and you can trade them off before you have to get in that big deal. Make that trade now and bring in a bunch of resources. And bring in, if you don't want to get players, get more draft picks. Get more guys. I get you're in win now mode and you want to keep him, but at some point you have to make these decisions. And that's where they do really well to get there, but getting over that hump, that's the problem.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Like I said, it for the Cowboys. It's about the little small day-to-day decisions that I think come back to haunt them. They're miscalculating the market at times at certain positions, like they did wide receiver before, like they did running back before. And then, like I said, them not reading, like you talked about, the new kind of methods of navigating the salary cap. They are more in some antiquated, old school ways of navigating the salary cap. Once you see that an organization has figured out a better way to do it, just copy it and just use that better, more efficient way. And I think the Cowboys, we know this, we like our guys, but they also are very insulated and they hire from within. They don't look outside a lot of the times for new ideas, for fresh blood. I think that also hurts them a little bit. So we'll see. The Cowboys are definitely going to make some noise and sign some guys at one point this offseason. We just don't know when it's going to be.